This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Zimbabwe rolls out China's Sinopharm COVID vaccine as other African countries step up their inoculation campaigns. Survivors recount their ordeal with kidnappers in Nigeria. And archaeologists unearth an ancient Egyptian brewery believed to be 5,000 years old. Hello and a very warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. And with me is Uche Okoronkwo with a preview of your business news.
Thank you, Lindy. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Live this. Former employees of South African Express team up to buy the troubled airline. And we look at some of the contenders of this year's Africa Prize for Engineering Innovations. Of course, all that coming up within the program. For now, back to Lindy.
Thanks, Uche. Well, we start the hour in Zimbabwe, where a COVID-19 vaccination campaign has been launched. This comes just days after the country received its first doses of the Sinopharm vaccine from China. Our correspondent, Farai Mokutuya, reports.
An official ceremony to kickstart the voluntary inoculation drive was held Thursday. The first recipient of the vaccine was Vice President and Health Minister Constantino Chiwenga.
My ministry conducted all scientific processes to ascertain the efficacy of Sinopharm vaccine, which was confirmed to be 79%. My presence here today with some Ministry of Health officials, including my deputy, is to exhibit the government's confidence in the Sinopharm vaccine.
The rollout will help determine the vaccine's effectiveness in the local population. Everyone being vaccinated is getting their blood samples collected. These will be used to assess the effect of the vaccine in their bodies between the time that they receive their first jab and their second booster shot after 2 to 3 weeks. Authorities are confident the Sinopharm vaccine will offer protection from the South African COVID-19 variant, which is now dominant here.
Our vaccination drive continues. I think the VP mentioned, as you heard, that this is really, or maybe he mentioned it earlier actually, that this is the inactivated, the real virus, killed as he put it, that is used in the vaccine. And science, the few science analysis that has already come is actually indicating that kind of virus vaccine perhaps actually better to handle with some of these variants. Remember though, there's not a single vaccine that is going to take care of all the variants. So and this is one of the reasons why we are moving as fast as we can, get our population covered. As they begin to mutate and so on, we should be okay.
Thousands of frontline health workers and essential service providers will be inoculated during the first phase of the vaccination drive.
This is another layer in the defense for our health workers. We lost quite a number of health workers to COVID-19, and anything that will do will go some way in providing safety for our health workers is more than welcome.
Zimbabwe received a donation of 200,000 Sinopharm vaccines from China and has procured an additional 600,000 doses, which are expected in March. In total, the country plans to vaccinate at least 10 million citizens. Farai Mokutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Beijing has backed the UN Secretary General's Antonio Guterres' call for the fair distribution of vaccines. A foreign ministry spokesperson says China's efforts continue, with 7 more countries, including Zimbabwe, Turkey and Morocco, having received vaccines during the Chinese New Year holiday.
We believe that all parties should work together to resist vaccine nationalism and promote fair and reasonable distribution of vaccines, especially to achieve accessibility and affordability in developing countries, and include those in conflict. China's efforts in international cooperation in vaccines aims to make the vaccines truly a global public good.
Well, the spokesperson says China has donated vaccines to over 50 countries and is exporting vaccines to more than 20. Beijing has also promised 10 million vaccine doses by the end of this year to COVAX, the global initiative led by the WHO to ensure equitable access to vaccines. Now, Senegal has also received its first batch of COVID-19 vaccines from China. Senegalese President Macky Sall has expressed confidence in the Chinese-made vaccines. He was speaking at the Blaise Diagne International Airport in Dakar. Senegal has authorized the Sinopharm vaccine for emergency use, but is yet to announce when the rollout will begin. However, vulnerable groups, including healthcare workers, will receive the first doses of the vaccine.
I say this with pride. We are entering a new stage in our common fight against our common enemy, a stage bearing hope with the receipt of these 200,000 doses of anti-COVID vaccines acquired from the Chinese firm Sinopharm and conveyed from Beijing by our national company Air Senegal. Excellency Ambassador, be my interpreter to my friend President Xi Jinping to convey my sincere thanks.
In South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa was one of the first in the country to receive the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine as the country began its inoculation drive. 5 healthcare workers received their jabs before the president. Healthcare workers are the first in line to receive the COVID-19 vaccine, as CGTN's Yoli Sanjamela reports.
As soon as the 80,000 Johnson & Johnson vaccine doses arrived here in South Africa, they were flown around the country to different vaccination centers. With priority given to health workers, the first person to be vaccinated against COVID-19 was Labour Ward Sister Zoliswa Gidi Gyosi. Other health workers who received their jabs include a nurse, a doctor and a cleaner. President Cyril Ramaphosa and Health Minister Dr. Zweli Mkhize were next in line.
This day represents a real milestone for us as South Africans, that finally the vaccines are here and they are being administered. And I was rather pleased that there were 5 people who were vaccinated before me, and they are health workers, and it was a joy to watch them to see whether anything had happened to them, and gladly nothing had happened to them. And it means that being vaccinated is a fairly straightforward process.
Speaking shortly after being inoculated, the president hailed the vaccination process.
This is a new era for us, and an era that will mean that, yes, we restore the health of our nation, and we do so with our health system, or through our health system that is robust, that is gaining strength on an ongoing basis.
In the next few weeks, South Africa is expecting more vaccine doses.
We're expecting between now and the end of about 4 weeks, we should at least be able to reach about 500,000 doses that we should be able to receive. And in that process, they will be coming in waves, and week by week we should be getting additional doses. By June, we have a commitment from Pfizer of about 7 million doses. That should be coming here.
The government plans to vaccinate 40 million people, or 2/3 of the population. The intention is to create a herd immunity against the coronavirus, at least by the end of the year. President Ramaphosa and the Health Ministry have implored South Africans and all adults residing here to take part in the vaccination process. The vaccines will be made available to all adults here, irrespective of their nationality or residential status. Yuli Sanjamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, a number of African countries are trying to contain a second wave of COVID-19 infections. The Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is, in fact, urging governments to follow its recommendations in combating the spread of the disease. The Public Health Agency of the African Union says countries that have not reported cases of COVID-19 variants should start administering the AstraZeneca vaccine. The vaccine was found to be 66% effective against the virus, but South Africa halted its rollout of the vaccine after initial tests showed it had limited efficacy against a COVID variant that emerged in the country. For nations that have detected COVID variants, the Africa CDC is calling for a scale-up of response mechanisms.
For countries that have not reported the circulation of the SARS-CoV-2 variant, that is the N501Y-V2 variant, we recommend that they proceed with the rollout of the AstraZeneca vaccine. And if you all recall, the initial studies that were done reported an efficacy of about 66% of this vaccine, which is above the 50% threshold. Second recommendation from Africa CDC, for countries that have reported the circulation of the SARS-CoV-2 variant, we recommend the acceleration of their preparedness to introduce all vaccines that have received emergency use authorization or approval by the regulatory authorities. Consideration should be given to the effectiveness of the vaccine against the variant, that is the N501V2 variant, or any other circulating SARS-CoV-2 variants in the country. All countries are then expected to expand their capacity or capabilities to conduct a genomic sequencing surveillance. And Africa CDC can support this effort.
Well, Somali health officials are among those on the continent battling a second wave of coronavirus cases. CGTN's Abdulaziz Bilo tells us more from Mogadishu.
Health officials are investigating if a new coronavirus variant is responsible for an outbreak recently witnessed in the Somali capital Mogadishu and other regions of the country. Several people have died since the start of the year, raising concerns that the second wave currently being experienced in the Horn of African nation could be deadlier than the first one witnessed in early 2020.
We have noted a big difference between the first and the second wave. We have sent samples abroad for further analysis to know the exact kind of variant we are dealing with. While we await for the confirmation, I urge the public to follow all the guidelines issued by the health authorities.
On Tuesday, the country recorded 100 new infections, the highest number since mid-last year. The health ministry says the cases were confirmed from a sample of more than 5,000 tests. Prime Minister Mohamed Hussein Roble, in his address to the nation, urged the public to exercise caution.
In recent days, we have lost some of our citizens to the disease. Some others are struggling with the disease. To the Somali people, both at home and abroad, exercise caution and be part of the solution aimed at preventing and eliminating this deadly disease.
The federal government has not yet announced any new measures restricting incoming travelers from countries where the new coronavirus strain has been identified. However, authorities in the Puntland state have banned the arrival of passengers coming from Europe and the United States, while urging those planning to return to postpone their travels. Meanwhile, despite a resurgence of coronavirus cases, the opposition has called for a mass demonstration in the capital on Friday to protest against the delayed elections. The government is worried such a gathering could pose a major health risk for a nation with an already weak health system.
Large gatherings and meetings in public places should not happen. Health authorities, intellectuals, clerics, and all stakeholders should take a key role in raising awareness. As a government, we will channel all our resources to tackling the disease and providing care to our citizens.
Elsewhere, health officials are restocking critical supplies, including oxygen cylinders, in 2 of Mogadishu's COVID-19 treatment centers in anticipation of a major upsurge in the number of new cases. Abdulaziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
You're watching Africa Live. Here's what's still ahead on the program.
That day I was sleeping in the hostel. So when I was sleeping, but I heard kidnappers is come for our hostels, but they had start shooting.
Survivors recount their ordeal with kidnappers in Nigeria.
No one again, he can hold in guns. Machine guns from police forces toward the protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
Thank you very much for your time. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
We start in Nigeria now, where the government has shut down all boarding schools in Niger State. This follows a Wednesday attack on a school in Kagara, in which one student was killed and 27 others abducted. 16 staff and family members were also kidnapped. The Nigerian army says it has mobilized troops to pursue the kidnappers and rescue the hostages. Meanwhile, survivors of this latest attack on a learning institution have been speaking out about their ordeal, one that has left locals shocked and calling for urgent interventions.
That day
I was sleeping in the hostel. Then I heard the kidnappers coming to our hostels and started to shoot. I came out and saw them. Then I ran and jumped over the fence. There were other students too running everywhere.
This is one of my boy, and there are two. One has injured, one is late, because they have shot one to death. So this one is able to escape.
Honestly, the security station is so bad. To the extent, I don't know how this thing used to come, because I see no reason why, but people will come with motorcycle. We come with motorcycle in numbers, like they cannot be more than 23, 30, 50, they cannot be more than that. And they will enter a village, they hold their operation successfully, and they'll go without any challenge.
The aftermath of yet another attack on a learning institution in Nigeria. The government Science College in Kagara in Niger State is the latest to be targeted by gunmen. Students and members of staff are among those abducted.
We're praying for them to be released soon. We're calling on the police to provide more security so that this doesn't happen again.
Another incident occurred today, Wednesday, the 17th, 2021, at about 2 a.m. at Government Science College, Kagara, where 27 students, 3 staff, and 12 members of their families were kidnapped. Unfortunately, one student was shot dead.
A statement from President Muhammadu Buhari's office condemned the attack. The president also said he had dispatched top security officials to coordinate rescue operations and meet relatives of the missing persons.
Call on the federal government to deploy all resources while we are looking at all options, both kinetic and non-kinetic, to ensure the safe return of victims of both incidences.
So far, no group has claimed responsibility for the incident, although it is suspected that bandits from the area are behind it. Apart from security challenges posed by the Boko Haram jihadist group, Nigeria's northwest and central states have been grappling with gangs who kidnap locals and demand ransom from relatives. Chom Rono, CGTN.
Well, insecurity in other parts of Nigeria has been experienced at the intercommunal level. Competition for pasture and scarce resources has led to deadly confrontations between herders and pastoralists. Tasima Kenda takes a closer look from the central Nigerian city of Jos.
Like many members of the Fulani tribe, 45-year-old Ibrahim Idris is a cattle herder. He lives on the outskirts of Jos in north-central Nigeria. Recent violence against the Fulani has badly affected his livelihood, but he says others have suffered more.
In this community, all households were previously burnt completely. Our cows were stolen. Personally, I lost 5 cows. Other tribes were the perpetrators. If they were not seen, the blame would be attributed to the Fulani. Just recently, over 300 cows were killed and 6 children also killed, just like that.
In a report, Amnesty International says more than 3,000 people were killed between 2016 and 2018. Some of the crimes do appear to have been carried out by other members of the Fulani tribe. As access to resources such as water, land and pasture gets harder, there are worries that attacks by other tribes will continue. But prominent members of the community say claims about them being killers have led to stigma that is hard to bear.
No sleep, no peace of mind. Our children can't go to school. Wherever we go, we are labeled as criminals and killers. In Nigeria, there is no tribe without mischievous people, but the Fulanese have been branded as criminals and killers. Even parliamentarians are legislating against us.
The government rejects that claim, but has become increasingly worried about a situation that seems to be getting worse.
People here say several of their loved ones have been killed, their cattle and other properties destroyed just because they are Fulani. They say they want justice and an end to insecurity in the country.
Security experts say the government needs to do more to address the problem.
There are several sides to this. We have the religious side, we have the political side, and we have the environmental side. Okay, but beyond that, the government has to show some willpower in bringing all the players, key players involved to achieving a common front. Just, clearly branding an entire group of people as mischief makers may not be the way forward. We may need to actually fish out the perpetrators of this injustice under whatever guise they operate and bring them to book.
The Fulani's cattle are an important source of food and other byproducts, including leather. But the community has serious issues to address before it can truly contribute to the nation's economy. Tassim Akende, CGTN Jos, Nigeria.
The election of a new Prime Minister and Presidential Council in Libya is the latest in a series of moves to bring back stability to the North African country. Yasser Hakim now takes a look at the challenges that the interim authority might face in achieving lasting peace.
After a decade of violence and chaos in Libya, a breakthrough could be on the horizon. The newly elected interim leadership has the backing of the two main feuding forces in the east and west of the country. The head of the Presidential Council, Mohammed al-Menfi, recently met with General Khalifa Haftar, allied to the Eastern administration.
The council that heads the country now is the best option from all candidates available, and most Libyans are united behind it. General Khalifa Haftar, as head of the Libyan National Army, has welcomed the new government, and his meeting with President al-Menfi at the Armed Forces headquarters in the east sends a strong message locally and abroad that reconciliation is near. They also agreed on the need to disarm militias as a priority.
Meanwhile, all the eyes are on the joint committee tasked with finalizing details for a new constitution and elections. However, experts believe there are still challenges ahead.
The main challenge is the presence of armed extremist militias and foreign powers interfering in Libya, which complicates the situation. The strength of these militias and the support they receive from abroad makes it difficult for us to be too optimistic. I think the 8 months for the new government to prepare December elections is not enough. There are also other militias without an ideology. They are armed and uncontrollable. They don't have loyalty to a sect or group. They want to remain influential in the scene and are hired by those who benefit from chaos in Libya.
The coming period is crucial for the North African state. Libyans hope to see a peaceful process that leads to free and fair elections and avoid another vicious circle of chaos and civil war. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Thousands of people have fled fighting in the Central African Republic since violence erupted over the country's December election results. Rebels are seeking to overturn the vote that saw President Faustin Archange Touadera re-elected. Meanwhile, children in humanitarian camps are receiving counseling while recalling the incidents of trauma they faced.
Violence and death. These are the images ingrained in the minds of the children who have experienced war in the Central African Republic. Some have fled to camps near the town of Kaga Bandoro. 13-year-old Fabrice Metagaza says he arrived here after witnessing his brother being killed.
They accused him of stealing and drove off in their car. It hurts when I think about my big brother who was killed. I sleep very badly. I have lots of nightmares.
The children often draw weapons, people bearing arms or their vehicles. Little by little, at a certain stage, the child starts feeling better.
Others have been in the camps for longer. 13-year-old Fatim Abubakar and her 8-year-old sister Khadidia lost their father during violence in Bangui in 2018. They are now regular visitors at a counseling center in the Mabele camp.
What makes me sad is the death of my father. There's no one left to take care of us. When I feel bad, I go to the counseling center. That helps me feel better.
Psychological support is provided once a week in the camps. Parents provide information to assess their children by filling out questionnaires. Therapists use stories, drawing, breathing exercises, or have conversations during sessions at Kaga Bandoro Hospital. However, they say more work remains to be done.
We began talking about psychological problems, the kinds of mental health problems that people are exposed to during war. I'm very encouraged to see that the first programs are starting to work, because it's true that in the past, we perhaps paid too much attention to the physical aspect. We saw the physical wounds and we treated them, but we didn't see the invisible.
The UN Refugee Agency reports that 92,000 refugees have fled to the Democratic Republic of Congo. 13,000 have crossed into Cameroon, Chad, and the Republic of Congo. The rest are displaced inside the Central African Republic. Ongoing attacks have hampered humanitarian access, and many continue to face desperate conditions. Daniela Pearson, CGTN.
An appetite for edible flowers is growing in Tunisia. Although Tunisians already use certain flowers in their traditional cuisine, one entrepreneur says she hopes the flowers she grows will spark a new culinary culture. CGTN's Chamgono tells us more.
42-year-old journalist Sonia Ibdi launched her edible flower business in 2019. She turned to organic farming after coming back from France. She brought back with her 42 seed varieties and now uses her own seeds.
At the beginning, when creating my project, I relied on exporting because edible flowers are not part of our culinary culture. But thank God, after the first advertisements posted on my Facebook page, I was very surprised to find that there were a lot of restaurants and chefs in Tunisia looking for edible flowers. To be honest, I was pleasantly surprised.
Ibdi says she wants people to feel like they're eating fruits and vegetables. Among the flowers she grows is the Nasturtium.
This is the queen of edible flowers, very popular with cooks and very healthy. It tastes like a radish. It contains a lot of vitamin C. 100 grams of nasturtiums contains 300 milligrams of vitamin C.
In hotels like these, chefs use the fresh flowers for dishes from soups to salads as well as teas.
Each chef has his way of interpreting or using the flowers. Some, for example, fill zucchini flowers and then have them sorted or roasted in the oven.
Indeed, the flowers have gone beyond introducing a new look and flavor. But it's not been an easy journey, as Ibdi recalls. The business involved a lot of paperwork, and she even sold a car to finance the business. As well as edible flowers, Ibdi has planted a large quantity of strawberries on the 5 hectares of land she leases. But the authorities say growing strawberries is in breach of a lease agreement. Ibdi now fears seeing her business wither. Chamhono, CGTN.
And now for a recap of our top stories. Zimbabwe has launched a COVID-19 vaccination campaign. This comes just days after the country received its first doses of the Sinopharm vaccine from China. The first recipient of the vaccine was Vice President and Health Minister Constantino Chiwenga. Authorities are confident the vaccine will offer protection from the dominant South African COVID-19 variant. Well, the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says countries that have not detected cases of COVID-19 variants should start administering the AstraZeneca vaccine. The vaccine was found to be 66% effective against the virus, but South Africa halted its rollout after initial tests showed it had limited efficacy against the variant that emerged in the country. In Nigeria, the government has shut down all boarding schools in Niger State. This follows an attack on Wednesday on a school in Kagara in which 1 student was killed and 27 others abducted. 16 staff and family members were also kidnapped. The Nigerian army said it has mobilized troops to pursue the kidnappers and rescue the hostages. Well, let's now go to Uche for your latest business news.
Thank you, Lindy. And coming up on Africa Live Biz. Former employees of South African Express team up to buy the troubled airline. And we look at some of the contenders for this year's Africa Prize for Engineering Innovations.
Business in Africa is at the crossroads, where opportunity meets innovation, where profitable new markets collide with global trends. From the sound of an African bell on a stock market's floor to the shout of the trader in a bustling free market. It's colorful, vibrant, and exotic. CGTN stands at the gateway to Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. From Morocco to South Africa, we talk to the deal makers and actors who fuel its engines of growth. Only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Well, let's start off in Nigeria. The International Monetary Fund has called on the country to devise ways to ramp up its economy, beginning with the cutting of its oil dependence. Now, that has been the outcome of the Washington-based lender's 2020 Article 4 staff consultation in Nigeria. The review shows that the country's recovery from recession may be slow, as CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam reports from Abuja.
Nigeria has been grappling with the devastating impact of the coronavirus. Its economy has been on a decline since real GDP contracted by 3.2% in 2020, fueled by the falling oil prices and COVID-19 lockdown. The West African nation depends on crude oil for nearly 90% of its export revenue, and much of that has been cut off. Now the IMF is encouraging Nigeria to focus on economic reforms that support sustainable revenue generation. But it won't be a walk in the park for a country like Nigeria, with several factors limiting its growth.
Our institutions are different, our cultures, our environment, our realities are different. If we're a little more ingenious, the IMF will have little reason to make these recommendations to us. In the past, we have seen how they have recommended structural adjustment policy in the era of the military, and we saw how that plundered us into an economic tailspin. How our exchange rate spiraled downwards, resulting in our inability to compete very well in the international market and affecting our balance of trade overall.
In suggesting what they're suggesting, they are not putting into consideration that we have heavy security issues that we're struggling with. They are not also looking at the situation that we have a lot of nepotism going on in the country and so much corruption.
Issues like double-digit inflation and falling per capita income continue to threaten Nigeria's growth, and government's buffers haven't had significant impact on the shocks from the pandemic.
It is also worsened by the level of insecurity that has been existing in the country, which has affected virtually everything in the country. The insecurity is been worse ever that we have ever experienced, and so it's affecting agricultural production, it is affecting movements of goods and services, it's affecting movement of human beings, and so to that extent, the economy is suffering.
IMF projects that Nigeria's recovery might be very slow under the current policies. Real GDP growth in 2021 is expected to hit a positive 1.5% and recover to its pre-pandemic level only in 2022. Such policies entail huge public debt service payments that leave limited fiscal room for crucial social and infrastructural spending.
We keep hearing stories, or we keep reading reports about government trying to pay attention to some of these things, creating infrastructure fund. We see the central bank now and again releasing funds to commercial banks, to fund the agricultural sector. We see, all kinds of schemes being developed by government to fund entrepreneurs. All these are salutary, but something tells me, or like we do know, something tells me that most of the time some of these funds are diverted. The problem is the diversion. In terms of policy formulation and policy direction, we can hardly fault government.
Economic watchers say government's diversification efforts will spur economic recovery. That and strategic policy adjustment reforms which would help navigate the economic downturn towards an upward trajectory. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Meanwhile, South African Express, the sister airline of struggling South African Airways, has been sold off to Fly SAX. The South African-owned consortium bought the liquidated airline for $3.4 million. Now, SA Express has been under provisional liquidation since April last year, but aviation experts have cast some doubt over the deal, which is expected to conclude over the next 3 months. Here's CGTN Sumitra Naidu with the details.
FlySax is a consortium made up of mostly former SA Express employees. Since the demise of SA Express, their employees decided to buy the airline. They crowdfunded the purchase with an anchor investor.
I think that the airline personally is beyond saving. It's also extremely interesting to work out where, if anywhere, the money, the so-called 50 million rand that is being expected to be paid by guarantee in cash to take over the airline is coming from. Because as far as I am aware, there were no hard assets attached to the sale. They're essentially buying intangible assets like the roots of the brand, the AOC, which was the aircraft operator certificate and licenses. And those are worth nothing.
SA Express owes creditors $66 million. Another $10 million in back taxes is owed. Staff wages since last year, amounting to around $12 million, are yet to be paid.
The airline's liabilities exceed over 900 million. Now, these are known creditors. And its asset base, as per our valuation, was sitting at about 113 million. So it is insolvent. And the provisions of the Insolvency Act is that we must then try and realize best value. The business rescue process required further funding of the airline, and that was unsuccessful.
A share sale agreement is expected to be signed with government that will then pave the way for FlySax to meet its capital adequacy requirements.
FlySax Pty Limited is a private company backed by certain anchor investors. Those anchor investors could be the shareholding or the grouping of FlySax Pty Limited. We're not privy to that. Could be or it could not be the former employees. We truly deal with what the offer is and from which entity, but the shareholding of that particular private entity is indeed private.
SA Express is the first of South Africa's state airlines to go under liquidation. Its sister airline, South African Airways, narrowly escaped liquidation through government bailouts. Sumitra Nadu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
And the shortlist for this year's Africa Prize for Engineering Innovation is out. The contenders include a digital financial services solution that audits patrons based on their online social profiles and a water-soluble bioplastic made using a plant waste material. Now, there's also sustainable packaging developed from banana stems to help battle plastic pollution and deforestation. The award recognizes ambitious African innovators who are developing scalable engineering solutions to local challenges.
Nigerian national Yusuf Belisanmi demonstrates how Shivent, a low-cost non-electronic and non-invasive ventilator, works. It was developed in less than a year and is designed to be used by non-specialist health workers in remote places in the world to fight the COVID-19 pandemic. Belisanmi and his team are at UK's Loughborough University and have been shortlisted for the Africa Prize 2021.
There's a significant demand for oxygen supply globally. When you have a system that requires less oxygen, it makes it much more efficient for hospitals to run. With our systems, we can go as low as 5 LPM, which reduces that cost to as low as 100 cylinders of oxygen in contrast to 300.
The Shivent utilizes a specially designed bottle with 3D printed components and plastic jar, along with ventilator-sized tubing and face masks available off the shelf at a cost of less than $100. Although the selling price of the device is yet to be determined, it will cost only a fraction of the cost of the average $2,000 price of a regular bubble CPAPs.
The Venturi blends air with oxygen, and then that goes through the expiration pipe. The patient inhales and then exhales into the expiration pipe, which then goes back into the bubbler. And that's, you can see that creates pressure. That pressure, of course, then enables, keeps the airways open, as well as reduces the work of breathing of the patient.
6 of the 16-strong Africa Prize 2021 shortlist are female innovators. One of them, Faith Adesemowo, developed Social Lender, a digital financial services solution that provides immediate access to formal financial services to those with little to no traditional access to banks.
A lot of people are not financially included. In Africa, this is a huge problem by itself. We have millions and millions of Africans who fall into this category. So the idea is these people need access to formal financial services, and we're there to provide that access.
The Social Lender partners with various financial service providers to offer facilities based on the social reputation scoring. It uses a preparatory algorithm to perform a social audit of the users based on their mobile and social media, allowing them to access banking facilities.
We score that individual, and based on that score, it's an alternative credit score, which we call a social reputation score. Based on the score, that individual can now access services on our platform with the partners that are already on our platform.
Launched by the Royal Academy of Engineering in 2014, the annual Africa Awards offers commercialization support to the innovators who are transforming their local communities. It has a track record of identifying engineering entrepreneurs with significant potential for social change. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Now, Facebook pages of Australia's Nine News Corp, which together dominate the country's metro newspaper market, have gone blank. Also affected is the government-funded Australian Broadcasting Corporation, which acts as a central information source during natural disasters. Now, Facebook's move represents a split from Alphabet-owned Google after they joined forces to campaign against laws designed to effectively force them to strike deals with media companies or have fees set for them. Now, both had threatened to cancel services in Australia, but Google has instead sealed preemptive deals with several outlets in recent days. Here are some of the reactions from residents in Sydney.
I think Facebook banning news is terrible, actually. I do use Facebook. It seems to be a catch-all, and I can get all of my news in the one spot, so it will really impact me.
Yeah, I think it's crazy. I think I'm a software developer, so I'm fascinated to see how the ban is actually affecting other sites that are getting crashed, and yeah, that bomb's getting turned off and everything like that. Yeah.
You know, they're so big and so widely used by Australians that people will just revolt against it. Like, honestly, especially the younger generation, there would just be chaos if they banned Facebook and Google.
This is outrageous and unacceptable. We expect that Facebook will fix these actions immediately and never repeat them again. This is an assault on a sovereign nation. It is an assault on people's freedom, and in particular, it is an utter abuse of big technologies, market power and control over technology. This will go around the world, but this stops. This is unacceptable. I will say this. Apparently their original mission was to bring the world closer together and to allow people to help share and express what matters to them. Well, that seems to have been replaced by profit over people. We say to Facebook, stop this now, and perhaps it's time to put people over profit.
Well, that's all for now on Africa Live Biz, but coming up later on Global Business Africa, Nigeria is no longer in recession, going by fourth quarter figures from last year. We'll be taking a look at some of those factors that are helping the country return to growth. All that coming up top of the hour. For now, back to Lindy.
Thanks, Uche. Well, let's take a short break. Here's what's still ahead on Africa Live. Coming up, archaeologists unearth an ancient Egyptian brewery believed to be 5,000 years old.
Every year, approximately 400 million tons of plastic is produced, and about 40% of that is single use.
79% of that is not recycled, it's not turned into energy, it's just going into landfill or into the environment in some way.
With the global focus on plastic pollution and my eldest son Tristan studying marine biology, I wanted to get involved and see for myself the true extent of the pollution in our region.
We're on our way. Finally the journey starts.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
To Egypt now, where archaeologists have unearthed what's believed to be a 5,000-year-old ancient Egyptian brewery. The discovery was made in Sohag, a city 500 kilometers south of Cairo. Experts believe it could be the oldest brewery in the world that had an industrial-scale production capacity. Here's CGTN's Adal Al-Makhrawi with more.
An Egyptian-American excavation mission has discovered a remarkable ancient Egyptian factory. In the city of Abydos, they found a huge royal brewery that dates back to the year 3100 BC.
In 2013, we discovered a huge number of pottery jars which had traces of beer that ancient Egyptians used. Our mission wondered just where all this beer had come from. It wasn't until 2020 that we started getting answers. We knew that beer was used for sacrifice and funeral rituals. Then we realized that there was a factory.
Archaeologists have unearthed 8 individual brewery structures that were standing on fire legs at that manufacturing site. The production capacity of the ancient factory is estimated to have been 22,400 liters of beer. Experts from the Egyptian High Council of Antiquities, as well as New York and Princeton universities, believe that other breweries could have also operated at the site.
A factory of that size gives an indication of the power and resources that the kings of the first and second dynasty had at the time. This is considered to be the first royal brewery in ancient Egypt. We've discovered other breweries before, but this is the first royal one, and it's the biggest brewery known in the ancient world.
Abydos is where ancient Egyptians believed the dead would transit into the afterlife. Royal funerals and sacrifice rituals used to be held there. Beer offerings to the ancient Egyptian gods formed a key part of those religious ceremonies. Adel Mahroui, CGTN,